Have you ever left a party or a coffee date or even just a conversation with a coworker and felt a strange kind of emptiness? You talked, you exchanged words, maybe even laughed a few times, but you walk away with this nagging feeling that nothing really happened. You were both there, but you didn't actually connect. It was like two ships passing in the night, politely waving from the deck, but never actually learning anything about the other's journey. If you've ever felt that, I want you to know that it's not because you're boring or because they were boring. It's usually because we're all focused on the wrong thing. We spend so much time worrying about having the smartest answer, the wittiest reply, or the most interesting story. But the great secret of human connection, the key that unlocks the doors to other people's hearts and minds, isn't found in the quality of your answers. It's found in the quality of your questions. Think of it this way. A statement is a declaration of where you are. A question is an invitation to somewhere new. It's an act of opening a door for someone else and saying, "I want to see your world. Tell me about it." Most of us spend our lives standing in our own room, shouting facts about it, hoping someone finds it interesting enough to come visit. The truly great connectors, the people we feel instantly drawn to, they do the opposite. They walk over to our door, knock gently, and ask what it's like inside. Today, we're going to learn how to do that. We're not just going to talk about asking questions. We're going to explore the art of asking questions that make people feel seen, understood, and deeply valued. It all starts with something so simple, so intuitive, that most of us completely overlook it. The single most powerful tool in your conversational toolbox is the follow-up question. Researchers have studied this extensively. In one fascinating study looking at thousands of first dates, they tried to figure out the number one predictor of whether two people would want to see each other again. Was it physical attraction, shared hobbies, similar backgrounds? Of course, those things mattered, but towering above all of them was one simple factor: the degree to which one person asked the other follow-up questions. It's not about having a brilliant opening line. It's about what you do after they respond. Most conversations die because we treat them like a game of tennis played by two people in different stadiums. You serve your line, they serve theirs back, and the ball just keeps flying into the void. Patricia says, "I'm so looking forward to this weekend." And Alejandro, trying to be a good conversationalist, replies, "Oh, me too. I'm going hiking." It's a perfectly nice exchange, but it's not a connection, it's just an exchange of information. Now, imagine a different Alejandro. Patricia says, "I'm so looking forward to this weekend." And this Alejandro pauses, leans in just a little and says, "You are." Your whole face just lit up when you said that. What's happening this weekend that you're so excited about? Do you feel the difference? The first response was about himself. The second was a pure, unfiltered invitation for Patricia to share more of her world. Every time someone speaks, they are tossing you little golden threads, little breadcrumbs of what is actually important to them. When Patricia says she's looking forward to the weekend, the surface topic is the weekend. But the underlying unspoken breadcrumb is excitement, joy, anticipation. A follow-up question is simply you choosing to pick up that thread and see where it leads. It says, non-verbally, "I heard you. And more than that, I heard what was asterisk behind what you said, and I want to know more." There's even a beautiful, simple technique you can use called the echo. You literally repeat the last few words they said back to them as a question. "We're planning a trip to Italy." Your response, "Oh, a trip to Italy." That simple echo creates a moment of silence and a gentle prompt for them to elaborate, to fill in the blank you've just created. It's so effective because it's effortless, and it keeps the spotlight exactly where it should be, on them. Because ultimately, we are all the main characters in our own movie. We spend all day inside our own heads, with our own hopes and fears and dreams. The greatest gift you can give someone in a conversation is to make them feel like their movie is the most interesting one in the world. To do that, we need to understand that there are always two conversations happening at once. There's the surface conversation, the one about the weather and your job and what you had for breakfast. It's the what. Then there is the underlying conversation. This is the conversation of emotions, values, dreams, fears, and passions. This is the why. This is where real connection lives. Most people spend their entire lives paddling in the shallow end of the conversational pool, the surface level. And it's fine, it's safe. But it's also where the conversation is chlorinated and cold and a bit boring. The deep end, the underlying conversation, is where the water is warm and full of life. Your goal as a masterful questioner is to be a gentle guide, inviting people from the shallow end into the deep end, but only when they're ready. How do you do that? You learn to ask questions that are less about facts and more about feelings. Instead of asking what they do for a living, you might later ask, what's the most meaningful part of your work for you? Or, what's a challenge you've overcome that you're really proud of? You see the shift. We're moving from a label to a story, from a fact to a feeling. There are 5 magical doorways that almost always lead to the deep end of the pool, to that underlying conversation. Ask people about their experiences, their dreams, what they love, their passions, and their motivations. Let's say someone mentions they're an architect. The surface-level conversation goes like this. Oh, that's cool. Do you design houses or big buildings? It's a dead end. The emotionally curious conversation sounds like this. An architect, that's fascinating. I've always wondered, what was the feeling you had when you saw a building you designed for the first time, actually standing there in the real world? Now you're not talking about concrete and steel. You're talking about pride, creation, and accomplishment. You're asking about their soul. Instead of, what do you like to do for fun? Try, what's an activity that makes you completely lose track of time? That question isn't just about the activity itself. It's about the feeling of flow, of passion, of being utterly absorbed in something you love. That's the stuff that makes us human. But here's a crucial warning. You can't just cannonball into the deep end. You'll scare everyone away. Connection isn't an interrogation, it's a slow dance. You have to earn the right to ask deeper questions. This is where the concept of reciprocal self-disclosure comes in. The psychologists who came up with the famous 36 questions that lead to love understood this perfectly. Their questions don't start with, what is your most terrible memory? They start with, given the choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest? They are arranged in sets, gradually increasing in intimacy. They create a safe staircase. You ask a gentle question, they answer. Then you offer a small piece of yourself in return, and then you ask a slightly deeper question. Think of it like building a fire. You don't start by throwing a giant log on the kindling. You start with a tiny spark, some paper, some small twigs. You nurture it. You protect it from the wind. As the flame grows stronger, you can add slightly larger sticks, and only when the fire is roaring and stable can you add the heavy logs. The same is true for conversations. Start safe. Build a warm, safe environment. Show them that you are a careful listener and that their stories are safe with you. The intimacy will follow naturally. Now, we've been talking about using questions to build connection, to draw people closer. But sometimes, you need to use questions for the opposite reason. You need to use them as a shield, a way to deflect difficulty or to protect yourself. Imagine you're in a job interview, it's going great, and then the interviewer leans in and asks, so, what did you get paid in your last job? Suddenly, the mood shifts, you're in a tricky spot. Research shows that if you answer honestly, you're more likely to be lowballed and exploited. But if you refuse to answer outright, you seem evasive and like you're hiding something negative, which kills rapport. So, what do? You don't refuse and you don't answer. You respond with a relevant question. This is the art of the rebound. When they ask, what did you get paid? You smile calmly and rebound with, that's a great question. I'd be happy to talk about compensation. Could you first tell me a bit more about the approved salary range for this specific position? You see what happened. You didn't say no. You acknowledged their question, but you skillfully pivoted, asking a question of your own that recenters the conversation on the here and now, not your past. The human mind is like a dog with a ball. If you throw a new, more interesting ball, it will almost always forget the old one and chase the new one. This works everywhere. Your friend asks you a probing question about your love life you're not ready to discuss. Rebound it. You seem really curious about that. How are things going with you and Mark? Keep the rebound relevant to the topic, continue the conversation, and you can gently steer the ship into safer waters. There's another powerful way to use questions strategically, not as a shield, but as a lantern in a dark room. Most of us, when we want to uncover information, ask questions that assume a positive outcome. We're looking at a used car and we ask the seller, "It doesn't have any problems, does it?" This is a terrible question. You have made it incredibly easy for them to just say, "Nope, runs great." You framed the question in a way that implies the desired answer is no. To find the truth, you must do the opposite. You must ask questions that assume the presence of the very thing you're looking for. Instead of asking, "Does it have any problems?" you should look the seller in the eye and ask, with genuine, non-accusatory curiosity, "So, what problems does it have?" This subtle shift is world-changing. The first question asks if there's a problem. The second question presumes there is a problem and asks them to define it. It forces a more honest, more detailed response. When you're viewing an apartment, don't ask, "Are the neighbors quiet?" The landlord will always say yes. Ask, "Have past tenants ever filed complaints about noise levels?" When you're giving a presentation, don't end by saying, "You don't have any questions, do you?" That's a plea for silence. Instead, open the floor with, "What questions do you have for me?" You are assuming the presence of questions, making it safe and normal for people to ask them. This technique makes you appear more assertive, more inquisitive, and much more likely to get to the truth of a matter. Finally, I want to share one last, almost counterintuitive questioning technique that can completely transform your relationship with people in positions of authority. Your boss, a mentor, or even a client. It is the simple act of asking for advice. We often think that asking for help makes us look weak or incompetent, but a fascinating study from Harvard showed the exact opposite. When we ask someone for their advice, they view us as more competent, not less. Why? Because the act of asking for advice is a powerful, subtle form of flattery. When you ask someone for advice, you are implicitly telling them a few things. You're saying, "I respect your experience, I value your opinion, I see you as someone who has knowledge that I don't." It strokes the human ego in a deep and profound way. It makes people feel important, wise, and respected. In doing so, it softens them to your influence and makes them a partner in your success. Robert Greene, in The 48 Laws of Power, wrote, "Never outshine the master." Asking for advice is the ultimate way to abide by this law. Instead of trying to impress your new boss with all the things you know, try asking for her advice on a challenge. "You've navigated this company for so long. Could you give me some advice on the best way to present this kind of data to the senior team?" You are not only gaining valuable information, but you are also making her an ally. Be careful, though. Never ask for advice on something you could easily Google, and never ask for advice on something they know nothing about. That just makes both of you look foolish. Use it wisely, and it is a key that can unlock mentorship, trust, and powerful alliances. Ultimately, the art of asking good questions is the art of being genuinely curious about the human being in front of you. It's about letting go of your ego, quieting the voice in your own head that's constantly thinking about what to say next, and just listening. A great conversation should feel less like a performance and more like a shared exploration, a co-creation. The right question is a gift. It tells someone that you are not just interested in the mask they present to the world, but in the person behind it. When you make someone feel truly seen and truly heard, they won't just like you. They will feel a bond with you, And in our disconnected world, that feeling is the rarest and most beautiful gift of all. So go out there and don't just talk, ask.